Hello, everybody. Today is a very special day for many reasons, but for one particular reason, we've got a very special guest. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn it over to Dino and let Dino explain. Let Dino start this for a change instead of me harping on, I've got lots of ideas for future episodes, but that's got nothing to do with today. So this is Carina, BreakFearFindFreedom, and of course, Dino. Hello, everybody. And our beautiful guest, Jessica Sulunas. Now, Dino, you take it from here.
Okay. All right. So, but thank you. Thank you. This is special. Stick around because this is going to be a good one. Not here, obviously, to talk about the Life Without Limits magazine. It launched. Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. You know who you are. But more importantly, the reason that I thought this would be a really cool podcast would be that they did a story about the magazine launch. And in the story, they wanted to find out about, what makes this guy tick? What's going on? What's with this sober movement? What's with this feel-good movement? Sharing the light, spreading the light. Our guest actually described it very well before she met me. She saw my posts and said there was like hope and spiritual messages ad nauseum. And you know what? You couldn't have described it any better. Thank you very much. But yeah, it is like, wow, how's this happening? So, look, the sober charge, right? I get clean and sober and I'm excited. And I made a personal choice to vocalize my experiences and scream them from the rafters, only because my mission is very, very targeted and focused. It's if I could change the life of just one person, it's worthwhile. Turns out there's millions of people, but not everybody handles the sobriety the same way. Some people don't have to scream from the rafters and things like that. But I find personally, it's like going to a karaoke bar where you first don't want to get on stage and participate, but then once you do, they can't get you off the damn stage. And that's sometimes how I feel. I get just as much out of this as others may get in hearing the message from ordinary people like me, like millions out there who have done it, who have lived it, and can talk about it with conviction. So with us today is Jessica. Jessica was brave enough to decide to talk about her experience. And it was shared in the article. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of continue that because it's just like a little, maybe like a paragraph about what she said and so forth. But I wanted to open this up to find out the backstory about what really happened and how did she finally make the decision to get in and get clean and sober and change her life. So with that, surprise, surprise, Carina, turn it over to you guys.
I love it. Hello, Jessica. I think Dino asked you the question, so you can take it from there. And just one quick caveat there. We will have a link to the article in the description box, so you can go and read it if you haven't seen it yet. Thank you, Jessica.
So I guess the question, hi, welcome hello, everyone.
Hello.
Just a quick name correction. I did get married, so my new name is Jessica Veljkovic.
Bam.
Yeah,
right.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I would say, Dino, you're anything but ordinary. So there's another correction. So I guess the question is, what made me want to get clean?
Yeah, I mean, tell us.
Yeah.
There were some weird circumstances between
you. Some very weird godlike moments. So I was recovering from like 20 years of trauma and had kind of hit a wall in my recovery. And I began drinking during the pandemic. I'm in my 40s, so I was late to alcohol, but I think I was an addict even before I touched it because I was thinking like an addict. And I started drinking during the pandemic, and slowly the disease manifested really quickly, as it often does. And I became a morning drinker. My average was about 10 drinks a day. I would wake up and have a screwdriver, followed by another screwdriver, followed by my martinis in the afternoon, followed by wine at night, wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, I was just drinking 24 hours. And I did have a brief 2-month sobriety last summer. I don't know, Dino, I don't think I told you about that, but I wasn't really ready. And I honestly think that anyone who quits and gets clean is never really 100% ready. It is about a leap of faith. And sometimes if you don't have that faith, as in my case, Dino kind of gave it to me. And so what happened was, it was around wintertime, and I was in an intensive outpatient program, and I was going to meetings, and I had a sponsor, and I thought I was doing everything right. And I was getting on my knees and praying at night and praying to believe in God more than anything else. And I kept relapsing, and they weren't hard relapses, but they were relapses nonetheless. I still had, as they say in AA, the mental obsession. And it is a spiritual, mental, and physical disease. And one day I was scrolling through my Greek mom's Facebook, and I came across Dino's page. I liked what I saw. I messaged him. We started chatting. I told him my story. I tried to go to rehab with my health insurance. It was a really horrible experience, and I talk about that in the op-ed. I guess that'll come out in September in the article, yeah. You know, it was just what Medicaid will get you. I was in scrubs, women with FU tattoos and assaults, and there were no counselors, there were no groups, there was no healing whatsoever. And I started reading his book, and I had a dream. And in the dream, a woman came to my dream and said, "You got to get out of there. You deserve better." And I really got that. I think it was Dino's book, where he would just fight the big fight and just seek a better life consistently throughout his stories in the book. And I was really inspired. So I got out of there, but I had no plan. And I told Dino about it, and I was really hesitant about getting treatment because I was planning a wedding. And even though I had family around me that was saying, well, you got to cut back, no one was telling me you got to go to rehab. Everyone was saying maybe get clean after the wedding. But I was a disaster. I was basically living a living death, drinking all day long. And that's what addiction is. You chase the drug, whether it's a drug or a drink, and you get the high, and then you are high the rest of the time. You're not really living your life. You're not growing. And I was using it as an escape to numb my pain. I didn't even like feelings of happiness. I couldn't stand feeling any emotion whatsoever. And so I talked to Dino, and he said, "Are you ready to change your life?" And I wasn't 100% ready, but I knew that I had an opportunity. He said, "Just pick a rehab and I'll pay for it." So I knew that it was taking a risk because the wedding was just 2 months away. But I knew that, and you can't get clean on your own. You can will it as much as you like, but it takes a village to get clean. And I was still not ready, though. When I went, I did go to rehab. And when I got to rehab, I told them, I said, "Look, I don't know if this is the right thing for me." And they say, "Oh, you have to want it to really get clean." But I think that even if you want it 50% or 25%, that's enough. There are other people around you who will pop up if you are open. And that's the thing about what AA says. You have to have the how, the honesty, willingness, and openness to get clean. And so the first week in rehab, I was miserable. I didn't want to be there. I was only there because Dino had said, if you get out early, I'll come after you. And that was a huge carrot for me because I was deathly afraid of what would happen if I got out early. So in many ways, in the beginning of my rehab stay, I was not doing it for me. I didn't have a me. There was no me left. And rehab changed everything. And what I will say about rehab, I really believe strongly in rehab. There is no perfect program out there. There's no perfect rehab. Mental health is really suffering right now. Programs are understaffed. You have to work it. And you will meet with therapists and counselors who might say something that gets under your skin. You might not like it. You just take the good and leave the bad behind. And I had a therapist there who said, the road to recovery is different for everyone. Just don't pick up. Just don't pick up and ask yourself, and then what? If you're going to plan for a drink, because the planning for a relapse starts early, then ask yourself, and then what? So I also had another big fear that I got over in rehab because of my trauma history. I was terrified of women, and I got to meet a lot of amazing women in rehab. And I immediately started lists of my character defects, but I also started working on my strengths. And that's the thing about addiction is it takes away yourself. It takes away your confidence. It takes away your self-esteem. And I started making lists. I created an alter ego of my drinking self. And I gave her a hideous name. I gave her the name of Janessa. And I said, Janessa, when she drinks, she's selfish. She doesn't care about anything. She wants to throw her life away. And then I created an ego of myself as a sober self. Who was the sober self? And a lot of it had been completely destroyed by trauma. So I didn't even know who I was. And I just worked the program. We had commitments come. I did service work. It felt good to feel useful. It was important to be vulnerable. And I did the full 30 days. I got out. And when you get out of a program, that's when the real work begins. And, I will say that Dino was the main reason I stayed sober. I did, and I still do have a litany of things that I do to stay sober. I'm early in recovery, and early recovery is very messy. Essentially, one of the great things about rehab is that you have a lot of downtime. And it is an opportunity to examine what makes you drink. Why do you go to the bottle? What do you want to change about your life so that you don't go back? What are you going to do different? And every time you relapse, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do different this time? So I go to an intensive outpatient. I have a recovery coach. I'm working on the steps. I go to meetings. I don't believe there's any one program that is the best. I think Smart Recovery is great. AA is great. But the guiding thread for me has been Dino, because Dino essentially gave me that hope, and he gave me that desire to want to like myself again. He saw something in me that I couldn't see. He saw potential in me. And I'm really good at seeing the potential in others and giving advice to others, but not for myself. And my self-worth was essentially nothing after addiction. And that's what happens. At the end of your addiction, you feel like crap. You don't have a self to fight for. And he believed in me, even though I didn't really know him very well. And when I got married, the wedding went perfectly. And they say it's a very stressful day when you get married, but I was sober. And I couldn't have done it if I hadn't quit drinking. So the desire to get clean initially started with, it was a small little bead inside of me, but Dino provided me with the rest. And then I slowly started building up for myself that desire once I got myself back. Once I started understanding what potential I had. And that happened in rehab, essentially. I was able to lead groups and do service work, and that built my self-esteem. And I saw, I have these leadership qualities, and I have this quality and that quality, and I'm compassionate. and I'm honest and I'm loyal. And so, but if it weren't for Dino, and still, if it isn't for Dino, I am also on Vivitrol. I'm doing everything I can to stay clean. But I know that I can't disappoint Dino if I relapse, and I would be disappointing myself. So I do, you could say it's a crutch. I don't think it's a big deal to have a crutch, whether that person is Dino or your spouse or your child or your sponsor. I think whatever it takes to get sober, because life, my sponsor would say, life will really get wonderful when you get sober. And the results happen slowly. So you have to be patient. It's like exercise. You have to just keep doing the next right thing. Even if you have a crappy day, if you stayed sober, that was a good day. You just have to keep going. So I owe a tremendous amount to Dino. It's still a journey. I'm still in early recovery. I'm learning a lot about myself. It's a new life. I am doing everything I can to make sure I don't go back to the life I had when I was using. And I'm just really grateful. Gratitude is another thing. If you're having a crappy day, make a gratitude list. You'll find an amazing amount of things that you're grateful for. Happiness is really just accepting your reality. It's not looking for something out there that you don't have already. And once you radically accept your reality, then you can just build on that. And yeah.
Carina, have you ever heard of a more charismatic speaker?
No. We were just spellbound. I didn't even need to.
It's just perfect words. They're real words. They're certainly not rehearsed. I mean, actually, she texted me before we got on. So what are we going to talk about? I'm like, don't worry about it, because the natural way is. But thank you very much for your kind words, by the way, Jessica. But what I wanted to do is I wanted seriously to focus on you and what an amazing person. And I think her story speaks to millions out there.
Yes.
Who may be going through the same thing. I mean, a lot of times people are just like, well, like me, I saw a sign and I knew that it was, like you got to want to quit. She's saying, well, the only reason I quit, I mean, there was a little spark. I wasn't 100% there, but the threat, I'll come find you.
Very real.
Whatever it takes. Now, here's the backstory to this, right? Her maiden name is a very common Greek maiden name. And so I personally did not make the connection in the beginning when we started talking, because, my Facebook is open. It's not private, so it's open to the public. And there's a lot of people that, message me and stuff. And so I really don't look at the last name. I look at the issue or the question or, whatever it is. And so we started becoming Facebook friends. I invited her to Sober Motivation, the platform where it's kind of an outreach. And that's kind of how we spent our time. Her going into the rehab before with the insurance that she didn't like, her coming out, her telling me she's planning her wedding, all these things that she said, I mean, truly did happen.
Yes.
Here's the amazing thing, though. When we talked and I said, pick a rehab and I'll get you in there. And she's like, well, after the wedding? I'm like, no, that's the crutch. Now, because you're going to have a beautiful wedding. Weddings, especially, I mean, any wedding, but me being Greek weddings, who are you going to invite? Who are you going to uninvite? Who's coming? Who is going to get angry? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff.
The politics.
Yeah. I mean,
Italian
you're never going to please everybody. She was willing. She was willing, right? The first time I actually spoke to her on the phone was on her way to rehab. The first time I heard her voice was on her way to rehab. Yeah. So she gets in rehab, and I'm mentally marking on my calendar, okay, 30 days, because when she's out, I got to call her. About 10 days into her program, I get a call out of the blue from her stepmom. Now, I didn't know it was her stepmom. Mm-hmm. This person who called, the reason it didn't come up a strange number, but it came up her actual name, is because she worked with my father at the Greek school for almost 30 years. Okay. They worked hand in hand, best of friends. And I always heard about her, you know, growing up and stuff like that. I mean, obviously I've seen her stepmom many times, but maybe not for 20 years. I haven't seen her. And I'm looking at the number and I'm like, wow, what's going on? You know, I answer the call and it was like, Dino, hey, you know, congratulations. First of all, you know, I see you all the time on Facebook and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to thank you so much for what you're doing for Jessica. And I'm like, Jessica? Yes, you the nice thing you did for her. I'm like, holy, I can't even say the word, right? But that's when it just, wow, that's the Jessica, that's her. You know what I mean? So maybe Jessica knew who I was because she was scrolling through. But actually, I had no.
Can I? Well, one thing I didn't reveal. Can I reveal another connection we have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know Dino at all. I mean, I really didn't make the connection, but I had his dad in Greek school. And he was my favorite teacher. Wow. And the reason he was my favorite teacher is that I had grown up with a lot of childhood trauma and had been through a lot. And he picked me to play the part of a Miliotis, which is like, we had a play in which we were playing Greek women who were subject to rule under the Ottoman Empire, who decided to like throw themselves off a cliff to choose freedom over slavery. So I had to do an entire monologue, and I had never been on stage before. I was very quiet, very timid. And this was my first theater experience. And what we know about theater is that it helps build self-esteem. It helps build your confidence. And he believed in me, and he believed that I could do it. And I did a good job. And I felt the same charismatic sort of like belief in me from Dino. And I also trusted him because I loved his dad so much. And I could see so many parallels and similarities.
Wow. Well, way to drop a bomb on me there.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah.
I had, again, I mean, people may think like, I mean, we're friends, right? And we should be great family friends, but technically, I know her about a couple months.
Right.
Okay. I mean, your family and my family go way back, but as far as you and I are concerned,
right, we're strangers. Yeah. Yeah.
So, again, I guess what I'm trying to, include in this beautiful conversation, by the way, and I'll step out quickly, is that it doesn't take a technicolor moment from Cecil B. DeMille to have these movies of the burning bush and all these fantastic millions of dollars in cinematography to imitate or emulate a miracle, right? Miracles sometimes happen, right under your nose, just random little things that you either pick up or you don't. You have to be ready, right? Mm-hmm. But what we just talked about, Jessica and Carina, I don't see it as a coincidence. Some people will say, these are all circumstances.
No.
He probably subconsciously knew who you were and saw you. I mean, you could say anything you want. I'm saying I didn't know her from Adam. I do this a lot, okay, by the way. But as far as Jessica is concerned, it was just such an amazing moment because, you don't wait around for a thank you or a call. I mean, it makes you feel good. I'm not going to lie. But, you do it because I'm on a mission, right?
Yes.
But for her mom out of the blue to call me, I was just like, and I pulled off the side of the road, by the way, after I talked to her. And I'm just like, wow. you got to be kidding, right? You have to be kidding me. So before she even called, Jessica and I had talked, and I said, if you finish the 30-day program, I will even invite myself to your wedding, which is something so rude to do, but I wasn't there for the free meal, okay? But I was there basically because here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, right? Getting clean and sober is hard enough. And when you get spit out into the real world after recovery, however you choose to do it, that's when the real, like Jessica said, that's when the real work starts, right? There's real people, people that are a good influence, people that are a bad influence. There's, radio in your face. There's billboards that, advertise whiskey or vodka or beer, and, people having a great life, running around the beach and drinking beer, but they have beautiful bodies, all these things that may seem trivial and meaningless to somebody who doesn't have an addiction to drugs or alcohol, but somebody who's an addict, I mean, it'll bother you, hey, how come I'm not having fun? So your immediate default, like we talked about, is it goes to boring. I'm not fun. Everybody's going to think I'm weird. How do I stay strong? I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to shelter myself. So think about that mentality for a second, and then think about when she got out, she couldn't even hide under a rock for a while and lick her wounds. She went immediately into let's plan a wedding mode. Let's finish planning a wedding, right? And the invites and the myths about the food, who's going to have this, who's sitting next to who. I mean, all this could drive you nuts, whether you're an addict or not, right?
Right.
And so I thought it was important, only from the standpoint that I go to her wedding to show support as somebody who's sober, as somebody who's pushing not just sobriety. It's become more than that to me. It's a lifestyle. It's living your life without limits. It's spreading light. It's sharing hope. And so I will tell you, at this wedding, there were beautiful people standing up and giving beautiful toasts. And there was a flute of champagne for every guest around the table. I mean, you don't discriminate. Oh, wait a minute, this guy's an alcoholic, better not. I mean, the staff just put everything. It was just beautiful. And here I was, after every toast, when everybody's clapping, I pick up my champagne. It doesn't burn, people. It's okay. You can pick it up. And you raise your glass, and then you just put it down. And I did this 4 or 5 times, and I was okay. It was more for her to see that you can have a good time and interact and engage in conversations sober. Even if you're in a room with a bunch of other people and how they celebrate and how they have a drink. I mean, drinking isn't bad. It's just that some of us can't. That's all. It doesn't mean like, oh, I got to stay away from you. Eventually, things get a lot easier. So, Jessica, I am, first of all, I think you're going to find that your true calling is speaking to others, because you could motivate the dead. But I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm very, very proud of you. And thanks for coming on today. All right, back to you guys.
I'm very humbled. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Dino and Carina.
Yeah.
No, Jessica, you're not going to get away with that so easily. So thank you, first of all, to be so open and honest. That takes a lot. A lot of people are terrified when they talk about podcasts. They think, I don't know what people think in their heads, right? So I thank you for that. And I thank you for your vulnerability as well, because that's probably the most difficult place to be, right? I mean, how do you get from getting into rehab, not being sure of what to do, and then coming out and having the opportunity to be so vulnerable? I mean, what are you, only 3 months sober right now? It's an amazing feat. So how did you get from one place to the next?
I mean, I think you just put one foot in front of the other, and you just do the next right thing. I really believe that hearing other people's stories is very humbling. We had a lot of commitments in rehab. Commitments are when people come and they speak and they share their experience, strength, and hope. I do read a lot of sober motivation. In IOP, people share their journey, and I get a lot of inspiration from watching people in recovery. I think that's huge. I'm not quite sure. I mean, how did I get? I think I think you have to just admit that you are the problem with addiction. You can't. I mean, a lot of people do have trauma like I do, but some people don't. And you can use a lot of excuses for why you pick up and use, but ultimately the problem is you. I actually think the 12 steps are important for anybody to do, because it's a moment where you start building, and this is scary too. When you get clean, you're suddenly full of awareness. You are feeling emotions. You are aware of your character defects. You are aware of the environment around you. It is overwhelming. And all you want to do is just check out. And it's a lot of work to pace yourself and kind of limit the amount of data you get in a day, because your mind just is in over analytical mode, thinking about everything. But I do my steps through AA and through Recovery Bible. And it's a lot of self-reflective questions about what my fears are, where do I have control issues? It's really about working on yourself. And I think that you have to be vulnerable, and vulnerability too is what leads to people connecting and building a community. You know, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability and how those who are happiest are those who are vulnerable, because they share in a community. It gives meaning. I think it also allows you to have a community that holds you accountable for what you're doing. When I read Dino's book, he was vulnerable in his book, and that was inspiring to me. I don't think you can really inspire anyone else unless you share that you're vulnerable at some point. It's a matter of trust. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I have found that people who are not willing to ask for help are the ones who relapse the fastest and the easiest. It's so important to be able to ask for help and to be humble and to know that you need the help. So if you just get into a practice of doing that, then it's in taking inventory of yourself every day. I notice every day I start to build resentments about this thing, about that person, and I have to check myself, because if I find something that's disagreeable, I mean, that's what the AA book talks about. There's a prayer in there where, we often drink because we don't want to accept our reality. So once we're finding something that's disagreeable with us in our reality, we have to work through it instead of just drinking it away. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place with that answer, but
can I say one thing? So during the first rehab that she didn't like, between that time, the first one and the one that I said pick one and go to, there was a little period of time. Now I want to talk about from an outsider looking in. Forget the fact that I'm Mr. Clean and Sober and Mr. Positivity ad nauseum. Just pretend I'm just a regular dude, like many, many sober families, of addicts are around the world, right? It was really, really, and I'll say this, challenging when you kept defaulting to, well, let me wait till after the wedding. Well, I could still function with what I'm drinking. I'll be okay, but I really think I should have the wedding first. And it was always going back to like kicking the can. And I believe in striking while the iron's hot. I mean, that's a business thing I learned. This is not a sober thing, but it kind of parallels. And so when she went to the first rehab, she didn't like it, obviously, rightfully so. And she got out. She was then, she texted me and we were talking and she says, no, I'm just going to wait till the wedding. It's okay. It's okay. I'll just limit my drinks. And at that time, I was just, I felt ineffective. And, it's easy to walk away and say, I tried, she'll come around when she's ready. What if she's never ready? And there's conflicting arguments on this thing. I'm not going to crack open the meaning of life with this, but I'm making a point. Is I reached out, if you remember, Carina, to you. And I said, there's somebody that I've been speaking with and she really needs to go, but I just need to kick her over the edge and I need your help. And right away, Carina, who does this for a living, took the call. And I have no idea what you guys talked about, but shortly after that, Carina texted me and says she's ready. She wants to go to rehab. So thank you, Carina, because that was the point where, no, I didn't want to give up on Jessica, but a lot of times you don't feel like you're getting through. And it's okay to reach out for a lifeline to kind of tag team the help. I don't believe in interventions. I don't believe in browbeating. I don't believe in take the mirror and turn it in your face. Do you like what you see? Look at you. Because like I've said many, many times, we know we feel low. We know we're zero, or like I say, less than zero. We get that. We don't need to see more of that. Okay. Or the shaking up. Don't you see how you're ruining your life? That doesn't work either. But there was some hot button that you and Jessica uncovered that was what in her mind made it important enough for her to do now. In other words, the urgency to do it right then and there. And a lot of times it is just that, is you have to find that one thing that's still somewhere in somebody that is the important thing to them, not you. Because I could cite off, alcohol, it kills brain cells. It'll ruin your liver. You'll die X amount of years earlier. Yeah, I know that. I know that. It's just, smoking a pack of cigarettes. It'll tell you, warning, but the people still smoke. So what is it that makes you want it at that time? And I think if you could have bottled whatever you guys talked about in that conversation, and everyone is different, but you found the reason for her to want to do it right then and there. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carina.
No, Jessica, it's fine. Thanks.
Oh, I was just going to say that conversation did change a lot. What Carina did was she asked questions. And I think that's what therapists do too, because the right question can really initiate critical thinking. And that way you're not being told what to do or told what to think, but you're asked to think on your own. She just basically said, do you want to change your life? And I remember being miserable. I was a miserable alcoholic. I was depressed. I was moody. My life was horrible. I was miserable. And she said, are you willing to give up a bottle of vodka? What are you willing to give up for that? And, the minute I walked into rehab, I remember looking at a sign that said, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. Wow. And I think that's essentially the thing that Carina touched on. And I started to think about it, and that was what helped. It was very helpful.
All right, Carina, Hallmark card. That's
wow, thank you. Right, but it's about teamwork. I think it's about teamwork. If one person, that's why you work together. And the best part is that, Dino, you didn't give up on Jessica. And that's priceless on its own, right? Because it's easy to say, no, I can't do this. I'm tired of your excuses. I'll see you later. So I'm commending you on that as well. Oh, this sounds like everyone's patting everyone on the back. Okay, let's come down, people.
Around, you know. But hey, look, you know what? This is a cool podcast, and I'll tell you why. We always say if we can help touch one person, it's worthwhile. Something tells me we're going to touch a lot more than one person with this, because it is a universal message that's coming from 3 different people on one specific. I hate calling you a case, Jessica, but just bear with me. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, so I feel like a very doctory and professorial today. But, you know, on one case, 3 different angles.
Yes.
Right? What a great movie, you know, and it's coming from 3 different sides, all with the same thing in mind is I want to change my life. I want to get clean and sober. And what's it like going in, and how does it feel going out?
Yes.
And the person who says when they get out that, oh, I'm great, nothing bothers me, I'm bulletproof, you know, is probably, you know, a little out there, or, you know, lying. But I think you get more Teflon through service. And that's why I thought it would be such an amazing thing. As soon as she said, you know, I'd like to speak, I'm like, how about tomorrow? Would you like to come on the podcast? Because you know what? It's tremendous therapy. Is, you know, the best reflection is self-reflection. And
yes.
You know, when you're able to touch people and you're able to share your story, you get, Jessica, you're going to get more out of this than you're giving out. Trust me. And that's going to recharge your battery a lot too. And then when it feels so good, like anything else that makes you feel good, you're going to want to do it more and more and more, where they're like, you know, get her away from her again, you know, Miss Positivity, Miss Sunshine. But that's what it's all about. A single touch can change the world, and it does every single day. So
that's very good. Thank you, Dino. Jessica, I want to ask you one question. What about your excuses? How are you doing with your excuses now?
Oh, it's amazing. You can, I still, you know, that's the thing. I still want to drink. And I remember being at an AA meeting, and I asked my sponsor, I said, you know, I want, this was months ago though. I said, I still want to drink. She said, go talk to Bob over there. And Bob is this 83-year-old guy with a hat sunken down on his face, and he's sitting in his chair. And I say, Bob, I want to drink. He goes, of course you want to drink. You're an alcoholic. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he said, just give it till midnight. So, you know, despite the fact that I have a willingness to not want to drink, I still, you know, I'm still early in recovery. Yesterday, I lost someone who overdosed and died from, she died of an overdose. And, you know, it's a maladaptive, you know, because alcohol works when it is a maladaptive coping mechanism. I mean, it is a solution. It's just a bad solution. So alcohol there's a reason us addicts have drunk in the past or done drugs. It works. It does something. But it's just the wrong thing. So I think that, what was the question again, Carina? I want to answer it because now I'm going off on a tangent.
Okay. So I was asking you about excuses, but I've just thought about, tell me, and then I'll ask you the next question that's come up.
I think you can come up with any excuse to drink. When I, you know, after my wedding, I thought, okay, well, for a long time, the wedding would be an excuse to drink. Then I thought, oh, well, wait till I lose a parent. Then I'm going to be faced with a challenge, a family death. How am I going to handle it? And I think it's like I'm almost setting up myself for failure by giving myself a ready excuse. Mm-hmm. And so I think excuses will always be there, but I think that, you know, when you go to AA meetings or you just hear testimonials of people who've made it through difficult times and have not picked up, Because ultimately picking up will just make it worse. It doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it worse. It just puts it off for a later time. And so I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Yes, you did, and it's very cool to see right now the transformation. Like you've said, alcohol doesn't solve the problem, but before you went into rehab, that's how you were dealing with your problems, and you were masking and hiding. So already that's a big thing where you're opening up and taking off the mask, and that's difficult on its own. So what advice would you give someone that's like, oh, I really want to drink. What am I going to do? And how do you reach out and say, hey, Dino, I need your help, or whoever? We're using Dino because he's your crutch, right?
Well, yeah. So a lot of people, when I go on Sober Motivation, I often see posts, people saying, I slipped up again, I feel horrible, or my fiance just died, or just, I really want to drink, or I just found out I have cancer, I mean, there's the classic, keep yourself busy. I think that works sometimes. Just making sure I keep a notebook where I have a list of reasons not to drink. So there are a couple of things that I've seen. It's not my original ideas. I've just seen recommended, where you keep a ready list, a notebook, a ready list of what the consequences will be when you drink. So then you can look at that. Then you can keep a list of the person you become when you drink, or what the pros and cons. You make a pros and cons list. Yeah, if you drink, you'll get a temporary relief, but it won't be permanent, and you'll just create problems for yourself. People say, do an activity you love. Call your sponsor, call another person in recovery. I actually find, my personal belief is, I think that when people make the decision to want to drink, they've already made up their mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is just my experience. I mean, I'm still early in recovery. I think
mine too. You're right.
I think they can pick up the phone and hope that someone will talk them out of it. Or if the person doesn't answer the phone, then they'll say, well, that's an excuse to drink because my sponsor didn't answer, or my best friend didn't answer. So I think the planning for the drinking starts even days before a person relapses. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to have self-awareness of the red flags. If you can start building self-awareness of the red flags when you first start initially thinking, oh, maybe I'll have a drink, and just being proactive about it and doing the things that you need to do to make sure that you can stop it in its tracks. That's talking about it. I really believe people in early recovery benefit. I'm a huge fan of intensive outpatient programs, having a recovery coach. But I think just being able to look at the red flags early on, and having a person around you who can be able to notice the red flags. So telling a spouse, telling a partner, a therapist, a sober buddy, I think that's the key. Because it can happen anytime. I mean, you don't have to have a huge excuse to relapse. It just, all of a sudden, you just decide, okay, I'm going to do it, because the brain is just, that it's that crafty of a disease. So you just have to be hypervigilant all the time and prepare yourself for situations.
It's typically not the obvious thing that's going to get you. It's little things that I think compound, right? So it's not something that's going to come in your face like, hey, Jessica, here's a bottle of vodka. I mean, it's not that obvious, but it'll be a disappointment, or you find out somebody in rehab overdosed, which, by the way, very, very common. Again, 98% of the people that went through my class, Jessica's class, and anybody else who's gone to class, 98% relapse. And of those who relapse, and I'm being conservative, 25% of the ones that relapse overdose and die. You'll never see them again. Is that sad? Yes. Is that reality? Yes. Is it the world's problems that are on my shoulders going to be my excuse to drink? Oh, this is just so sad. I mean, we'll never make it. The statistics are so bad.
No.
You can let anything get to you. There's a good way to look at it and there's a negative way to look at it. And you have to decide. But one of the great sayings that keeps going over and over and circulating in sober motivation platforms all over the world is it's just a bad moment. It's not a bad day, or it's not a bad life. It's just a bad moment and it will pass. It's what you do at that moment when you hear these things, snap out of it. Oh, I mean, that's very dramatic, but it literally can be snap out of it. I mean, if you're having like these feelings or thoughts or whatever, some people pick up a Bible, some people pray, some people call their sponsors, some people go to a meeting, some people take a shower, some people get in their car and just take a nice drive. You don't know. It could be all of the above, none of the above, but it's changing that action right when you're thinking about it. Some people will think about drinking for the rest of their lives in sobriety. Some people, it'll take 20, 30, 40 years for them not to think about drinking. Everybody's recovery is different. And the main thing is that there's some universal things. Everybody wants a better life. Everybody wants that hope. Everybody wants that motivation. Everybody wants that little spark, right? That may stay in their head for years. And then finally it just comes out, oh yeah, I mean, you just don't know, but you got to try. And so one of the cool things about the sober nation, as I call it, there's 30 million recovering addicts, by the way, just in the United States. Think about the world numbers. And I'm starting to see how many there are out there. And forget the sober people, the drugs and alcohol. There's mental illness, there's depression, there's anxiety. There's also people that just had a bad day. There's also people who just lost their business. They don't suffer from depression or anxiety. They're not clinically diagnosed. They don't have an addiction problem, but they feel bad. Okay. I mean, this is universal. This goes way past the recovery thing. But all of them in these platforms, it's almost like a club. You wear your stripes proudly. You can be yourself. You could talk about things that normally you wouldn't say in public, and it stays private. And people respect that. People want to see you get better. Nobody wants to see you get worse. And so it's a very uplifting experience to be part of that type of a community. I will say that. So they're very proud people out there. And anybody who says I'm a day sober, I'm 30 years sober, I'm whatever you are, we understand more than anybody that is a huge statement that you should say very, very proudly. Some people write it. Some people participate with likes and shares. Some people vocalize it. Some people share their experiences. My gut, and I don't have a crystal ball, is I see Jessica sharing her experiences and lighten up the world. It's just a hunch, but what do I know?
Well, I've learned a lot from others around me. I mean, I think I'm very humbled by the opportunity. I think, I was reading the daily reflection today off the AA website because I just needed to ground myself. And it said, humility is the key to serenity. And I think, we get in our heads and we can also become overly confident about our sobriety. And so it's really important to remain humble. And I'm just really humbled by this whole experience, by this opportunity to share what I have. And what I have is really nothing original. It's really coming from observing and listening to other people. So.
That's great.
I love this, Jessica. It's how I always believe that all our experiences are there to take us to one point. I mean, there's always divine intervention or whatever it is. We're not alone in this world, right? And how it's beautiful to see you right now, how you're speaking up and you're so clear and you're so confident in in the way you're speaking right now. And this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't had the alcohol experience. So I'm just loving all these synchronicities. It's really beautiful.
I would say actually that, lately I've been feeling grateful that I became an alcoholic. And now I understand when I go to meetings and I hear, "Hi, I'm Sandy and I'm a grateful alcoholic." And I'm like, how can you be a grateful alcoholic? But now I think I'm starting to get it, because I think it's just like a total change in your life and there's positives that come out of it.
Mm.
So.
You've been road tested. You got the history, you got the scars, and that gives you the wisdom to share with other people. That's really what they mean, I think. But everybody's got their own take.
Yes,
Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure. Something tells me we're going to do a lot more shows. Carina, it was a lot of fun. And for everybody at home, again, if we could touch one person with this episode, and I think we touched a lot more, it's well worth it. So special thanks to Jessica today.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your marriage. And congratulations on your sobriety. Keep it going. I'm very proud of you. I'm sure we're both very proud of you. Yes. And that was Break Fear, Find Freedom. We'll see you next time.
See you next week. Bye, everyone. Bye, Jessica.